Welcome to Discover Me podcast. We bring you amazing people doing remarkable things in a very influential way. I'm Brian,
And I'm Lavanna.
and today we have with us Mr. Mark Brown, husband, father, retired Major General, former Chief Operating Officer of Federal Student Aid, and now Executive Director of Student Freedom Initiative.
Right.
Welcome, sir.
Welcome, sir. How are you today?
I'm doing great. It's great to be with you all, and it's great to have an opportunity to talk with you and your audience.
Yes, sir. Well, we definitely appreciate you taking the time to spend this little bit of time with us today. So before we get started, we'll jump right into it. Can you tell us a little bit about who Mark Brown is?
So who Mark Brown is? That's a great open-ended question. That's
Yes,
a great one.
sir. Please tell
I
us.
you know who I am, and I think depending on who your audience is, I want to. So I am average American person, I think. In fact, I would tell you that. So I was born in the South Side of Chicago, raised by a single mother with a grandmother in Georgia, and together they raised me, right? So I say that only to say average at best, because there are billions and millions of folks whose profile today would be just like that. And so I like to start with that and say that's exactly who I am, an average guy who's been fortunate to be blessed with lots of opportunities in life, but certainly beginnings, much like you could close your eyes and walk around inner city Chicago today or South Georgia, and you can get 500 more Mark Browns in about 3 blocks, probably. So average as average can be.
I like that.
Wow. So for me, I want to know, how did you get from Chicago to the Air Force? Like, what drove you there?
Oh, yeah. Well, now keeping in mind, this is like 38, 39, and then the numbers just started to blur many years ago, 4 decades ago. But I got to, and this is another kickback to your original question. So there's this group of people who come out of high school, and I think this is an important point, who are neither athletically inclined enough to get money to go to school, or so bright that everybody wants them to come to their school. They're just right in the middle, right? Yes, grades are okay, but they aren't amazing, like everybody's going to go falling it over for them. Good effort. And so where do they fit, right? Where do those folks fit? Which is, I call them the 80 percentile. They're not either on either of those extremes. So that's exactly where I was coming out of high school, right in the middle of everybody else, just right in the middle of the pack. But I was fortunate enough to be mentored by Tuskegee Airmen, which has been a group forever, even before the movies, and to be offered ROTC scholarship. And so that's how I got to Tuskegee, Alabama, which was Tuskegee Institute at the time, as on an ROTC scholarship and federal student aid. Those were the two things that got me into college, because as would be also the case for many, I didn't have like stacks of money to go to college. So that's how I ended up at Tuskegee, and that's how I ended up in the Air Force ROTC. And, that's where, at least from a collegiate perspective, it began for me.
That's interesting. How did you get to the point of being mentored by Tuskegee Airmen?
Well, they've been in high schools and around for years, before the HBO movie, right? So the truth is, the Tuskegee Airmen, who are now the originals, who are dying out naturally by virtue of age, in their 90s and hundreds, right, of age. If you think back far enough, they've been out and doing great things post their military careers for many, many years, but they weren't known very well. An important lesson we learned from that is how many hidden figures are there in history that are just waiting for someone to pick up the pen and tell their amazing stories. But they're doing things, and these men have been doing things long before people tell their stories, and getting young men interested in service in the military, and they are very much interested in aviation and those kinds of things. Nothing new for that group. They just got the notoriety, I think, after the first HBO movie series that came out.
So how was your time at Tuskegee?
It was great. You know, it's a tale of two stories, right? A tale of two cities. So I'll give you an example of what I mean when I say it was great. So I'm a firm believer that you need to understand the cultural differences in the country all around you, not just the ones that you're comfortable with, but you need to live in those that you're uncomfortable with. In fact, many of us would be better for that. And I'll give you an example. I was in a marching band in high school, drum and bugle corps. So you never lift your legs but so high, everything is straight and narrow, right? And I was a pretty good musician. I play a couple of instruments, at least by those standards, I was a pretty good musician. And so I showed up at Tuskegee and I wanted to be in the marching band. And nothing could have been different because you have to know how to dance. You have to know how to put your instrument down. You have to know, as the young people would say, you have to know how to drop it, right? And I couldn't drop it very well back in those days at all. And so I was probably the laughing stock of the rest of the band. But I learned all these new things. And for the very first time in my life, when I arrived at Tuskegee, literally the first time in my life, basically because of where I went to high school, what I see, everybody around me looked like me because it was a predominantly historically Black college. And he goes, well, is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? Well, here's my point about that. All striving to do something, all wanting to better themselves, instructors that looked like me, proud men who had gone on and done things that looked like me, and people who said, as a matter of your very first year of school, it is mandatory that you take African-American history studies. In other words, we're going to make you, at least for 1 hour a week as a freshman, reflect on who you are, where you came from. Why do you look that way? Where are those features? What are what are your ancestry? If you've read about it in your history books, or if you haven't, we're going to bring it out for you. My time at Tuskegee, everybody's different. And I know that some people probably would land in this very small Alabama town and not be able to even process how they were going to live in such a small place. To me, it was wonderful. It was a great 4 years. I silently say when my wife is not around, it was the best 4 years of my life. But when she's around, I can't say that anymore.
No, don't say that.
but those 4 years were wonderful as a learning and a growing experience, and friends that I have to this day. And in fact, has a lot to do with the job that I chose most recently, has a lot to do with what I thought the impact of Tuskegee was for me.
Wow. I felt every piece of that. Of your story, and that was amazing.
So you just mentioned the job you do today. Could you tell us a little bit about the Student Freedom Initiative?
Yeah, let me back up a little bit and tell you about the job I had prior to that and how I got the Student Freedom Initiative.
Yes.
Okay.
So the Department of Education is the central spot of education for K through 12, as well as higher ed in the United States. That's where the policy is built. That's where the development is doing. That's where the compliance rules, everything is there. It's like headquarters Air Force or the Pentagon. It's like the Office of the Secretary of Defense, but just think of it in education for those who would draw a military parallel. When my last two assignments in the Air Force were the preparatory stage for a job that I got at Department of Education. Because the last couple of jobs that I had in the Air Force were all centered on education and training. At one point, I was a what we used to call base commander or mission support group commander in Columbus, Mississippi, which is a pilot training base, right? And that base is about graduating pilots. I mean, that is the SOAR mission. And so curriculum and standards and maintenance support and all of that's required. I lived that life for a couple of years. After that, I led the life of a CFO for a large part of the Air Force that buys and acquires materials out at Wright-Patterson in Ohio, which was part of my background and my professional training, Air Force. But then at Second Air Force, I ran classrooms all over Second Air Force, right? You guys will recall that, right? All of the training classrooms, everything where they were trying to learn competency-based education. They were trying to figure out how to, what I call flip the classroom, how to get people in and out quicker, and also how we could test them out, right? So we were going through all of these educational experiments to make sure we could get production up across all of the places where we did training. If it was in Wichita Falls, Texas, or if it was in Goodfellow Air Force Base down in Texas, or if it was in San Antonio, Lackland, we were trying to get students out in classroom time, competency, into technical training, and out to the Air Force. Schoolhouse, right? Schoolhouse. So if you match this schoolhouse and educational training with this CFO, financial management and leadership, it gets you to an appointment I got from the Secretary of Education. So the Secretary of Education can make appointments by virtue of her position. They're non-political appointments for a series of 4 years or more. And she has the ability to appoint what they call a chief operating officer, she or he. In this case, in my case, it was a she. And so she appointed me to be the chief operating officer of federal student aid, which is all of the federal student aid, work study funding, grants, Title IV funding, the financial aspects that are all needs-based for students across the country that want to attend higher ed. And so that's like $1.7 trillion. That's a lot of money. I'll just put it that way. $1.7 trillion is a lot of money. So 1.7 trillion was the size of the portfolio. And it was a pleasure to manage that and to lead that and to lead the organizations. We had 10 regions around the country where we operated out of, headquartered here in Washington, and like 20 to 25,000 contracted support in everything from collection agencies to loan servicing. It's a big industry, big industry. All of the attributes of learning how to run Air Force budgets, Air Force acquisition, Air Force contracting support services for those budgets, leading people, learning how to do classrooms, training, what it meant for education, were all attributes and competencies that prepared me to do that job. And I enjoyed doing it. Here's one thing I learned there, though, to get to your question, Brian. I learned that inside this big old loan portfolio that I had, this 1.7 trillion, that there were some things that we weren't so good. And what wasn't so good is that minority students who, not necessarily any fault of their own, financial literacy, whatever, were getting these loans with the intent to do better, right? Social mobility in college. In many cases, either not finishing college or not paying the loan back. But either way, not getting to a greater point after college than they were in college. Yes. That's a bad thing, right? In other words, now why would that touch me and why would I relate to that? Because if you go back, I'm a freshman at Tuskegee. Depending on federal student aid, right? The same programs that I was running, and ROTC. I'm lucky I had ROTC to balance it out, right? So that kind of helped pay the gap. I didn't have to go get the big loans, but it created for me social mobility. I would not have been able to do what I did in the Air Force. I wouldn't have been qualified for any of these jobs that are there now or that I'm enjoying doing, or provide for my family in the same way, that kind of thing, had it not been for some assistance to get started with education. Mm-hmm. That's by definition social mobility, to move from one element of society to the next. Greatest part about our country, you don't have to be born and restricted to your last name and your zip code. You can move from that based on many things, and the federal government at times is in a position to help. In this particular case, we weren't doing a great job because the people weren't being able to take advantage of what was there, maybe for many reasons, right? So at the end of the appointment, I met a guy. His name is Robert Smith. If you ever want, it's Robert F. Smith. Robert F. Smith is very wealthy. He's a billionaire, multi-billionaire. In fact, he's the wealthiest man of color in the country. He goes to a graduation. This is an amazing story. He goes to a graduation at Morehouse College. And you could probably Google this and find out about it, if your listeners may already know. But he's the graduation speaker for 2019, Morehouse College class of 2019. He gets up to do the graduation speech. He's giving his speech, like it goes. He says, I'm going to do one more thing. If you have a student loan and you're in the audience today, I'm going to pay it. He paid everybody's student loan off that was in the audience, everybody. And if their parents had signed Parent Plus loans, he paid those off too. Wow. Now, of course, that's a pretty big check, I guess. He did that. But to do that, his office had to work through the Office of Federal Student Aid. of which I was the chief operating officer, right? And so we had to work the execution of this after he wrote the check. We had to work with the students, work with the parents, find out what the loans are, all of that stuff. Well, Robert Smith and his team came to me and said, how do we do this to scale? Now, we can't go to everybody's graduation and pay everybody's student loans off. There's not that much money anywhere. Right? We can't do that. But how do we develop a program that will help students, especially minority serving students who are coming, in many cases, the data supports this, out of needs-based programs, not get themselves further indebted, and then keep themselves from enjoying what education and life is supposed to provide them, which is freedom, right? The freedom of choice, the freedom to do the things they want to go. If you want to go teach school, go teach school. If you want to be a lieutenant, go be a lieutenant. If you want to be a cop, go be a cop. Whatever you want to be, go do it, and don't feel the debt around your neck that keeps you from doing it. And that is how we founded the Student Freedom Initiative. And that gets to your question, where am I working today? I'm the executive director of the Student Freedom Initiative, where we provide holistic services to minority serving institutions, starting with historically Black colleges, where we do 4 things. We do an income contingent for STEM majors, which means we, instead of giving them a loan, it's contingent on their income, right? And then they pay it back based on their income. But in other words, you don't get a job, you don't pay us. We want you to be successful. That's the whole point. To make sure you're successful, we put you on a platform called Internship X. Who else is on the platform? Fortune 100 companies. We want to match the Fortune 100 companies with the students, make sure they get at least 2 paid internships between their junior and senior year. The data says, this is data-based. It's not just emotion, it's data-based. If you can get 2 internships, 2 paid internships, most likely you're going to get a job. And not just any job, a good job, right? And that's what we want you to do. We want you to get a good job so you can go out and make some good money and do some good things, right? That's the whole point. We provide mentoring, volunteer mentoring services, and then we help the school to improve its infrastructure so that it can continue to serve students. We call that capacity building at the HBCU. That's what the Student Freedom Initiative is all about. How do we do that? That's a good question, right? Where does the money come from? This is not the federal government, so this is not like getting money from taxes. Permanent donated capital. Billionaires who give us, who make contributions to the cause. Why would they do it? Here's the point. Here's the point of why they do it, and then I'll let you go to your next question. One reason they would do it is because if we get enough of it, and for us, that number is 500 million. We raise enough permanent capital, then by virtue of the students paying back percentages of their income based on their jobs, it will continue to revolve around and be self-sustaining. And students will always be able to go back and close the gap on at their minority serving institutions, needs-based, from this fund. It's like an endowment for all of historically Black colleges and universities. Does it matter to me at this point in life? It does. It does, because if it had not been for that Tuskegee experience, Tuskegee Institute and all of that, I don't know what I would be doing. And so that's it. That's the answer to your question, Brian. You asked me what time it was. I'll tell you how to build a watch. That's the answer to your question.
That's pretty amazing.
It is.
I didn't realize you all found it. I didn't realize it, like, so when you said this, I thought it existed, and maybe I didn't even understand. I didn't know what it was, but you all actually founded that. Like, this is recent.
Well, I didn't find it. Robert F. Smith is the chairman and founder.
Wow.
I'm running it for it. I'm the executive director. I was fortunate enough that he picked me to run it, but it's his vision. I didn't go to Morehouse and pay all the student loans off. I couldn't have done that. He did that. It's his vision. It's his way of contributing to society, based on things that happened to him growing up and how he believed he made it.
Wow. So this touches every historically Black college out there.
It does. Right now, the program is for juniors and seniors who are majoring in STEM disciplines.
STEM,
science, technology, engineering, math. Right now, as we raise more capital, that may be expanded. There are 121, I believe, historically Black colleges. And we're going to keep going until we bring all of them on board.
So if I am a student at a historically Black college today, junior or senior, what do I do? And excuse me if help me out.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's build a profile here. student, junior, senior, historically Black college, STEM major, could be any STEM major, any of the STEM majors as determined by the school. First, you would get your financial aid that you normally get, your work study, but you wouldn't get a Parent Plus loan. You would go to studentfreedominitiative.org, right? And you would apply. And assuming you have to be making good academic progress as defined by your school, right? And now think about it. This is an investment. We want you to do your part. So your part is to graduate, get a good job. Our part is to make sure you don't indebt your parents in doing so, or also indebt yourself unreasonably, so that you can have options when you get out. But you apply, you could get up to $20,000 per academic year to close off your college expenses. So a total of $40,000 if you wanted it over your junior and senior year to close off your college expenses. What we're trying to do is close that gap, so you don't have to leave school for money, and you don't have to go get one of these crazy loans out here where they want you to pay 25% or something like that. And then, you never ever even pay the principal back. You live your life paying interest, which people do sometimes, or quit school because of the situation that they might be in. Studentfreedominitiative.org. That's what you would do.
That's it.
To answer your question. Yeah, if you fit that profile.
I feel like this 10 years that people through their 20s that they spend paying off their student loans, like resolved, can be resolved with this program, with this opportunity, given that, get grades, pay it back, do those internships.
Yeah.
But just that weight off of our kids.
Right. It is.
Yes.
Here's the point.
And
So
parents.
you're exactly right. Here's the point. It's about wealth creation, and generational wealth.
Yes.
And I will tell you that, and some of this is opinion, but most of it is based in fact. Generational wealth is hard to create in the African American community. Yeah. And in the minority community. Now, I know that that's a sensitive subject, and people will go, "Oh, no, please." Well, let's just face it. Generational wealth in many ways has been robbed from people of color for many reasons, right? And I can give you an example. The process of redlining, which is a documented court case, where neighborhoods are redlined. People can't buy in certain neighborhoods, right? For historical reasons of prejudice and bias. And so they couldn't buy. Well, if my great-great-grandparents had bought a home in a certain area 2 decades or 3 decades ago and passed it through the family, that's generational wealth. And so if I don't have to buy a home, I simply build one on the land that they purchased. Don't I have a leg up in terms of generating wealth for myself?
Most
and for my
definitely. Most definitely.
Wealth passed on from generation to generation changes the lives of folks, and it paints a different picture for them. Wealth means that you have the pockets to write the checks to send your kids to school, right? To give them a better off. Right. Yes. Borrowing and indebtedness means you're not creating wealth, you're paying bills, right? No matter how smart you are or what kind of great job you get, which all that happen, the ability to create wealth is a problem and a challenge in the African American community. And it's something that we ought to be concerned about as a nation, in my opinion, and as a people of color. I believe that. I don't in any way mean for it to be offensive to anyone of any color or race or background. I just believe it to be a fact that we have to do that.
That's true. That's a common topic right now. Too.
It is. Yeah. It is.
It's a good one.
Absolutely.
Yes. Well, that was a lot more than I thought that I was going to receive, but that's amazing. So where from here? Like, there's so much that can happen with this initiative. What's next?
Yeah. Well, here's what I think we got to do. I think in terms of this initiative, we have got to continue to raise the capital, the permanent donated capital, and that's on me and my staff, and we're out telling the story. to people and telling this story to corporations, telling it from a framework of social justice and equity, and a framework of higher education, and a framework of STEM deficits. There are more demand for STEM jobs in the nation than we have STEM people, right? And so let's not leave out a segment of the country that can contribute. That's our story. So if I'm running a company and I say that I believe in diversity, I want to diversify my C-suite. We talk to the United States Air Force, whereas the United States Air Force says, I want to diversify my senior leadership. Well, you're going to have to bring in more lieutenants that look diversified, right? So you have to get that talent in, right? And so you have, and once they get in, by the way, it has to be a good place to be. In or out. I use the military as an example, knowing that you all are military, and I use corporations as examples as well. Look around the boardroom. What does it look like? I mean, look on the walls. Go to Pentagon, walk through the walls. Look on the walls of the command rooms, command centers. What do they look like? I mean, you don't let anyone else judge for you. Go look and count. I mean, it will help you. If you see a lot of women of color on those walls, I want you to take me there, because I've found very few women of color. There's a deficit of women of color in senior leadership positions, both on the federal and non-federal side. Why? I argue that it's not intellect and it's not ability. It's being able to source that talent and then mentor that talent through the system. So what's next? Let's get as many of these STEM graduates, for right now, graduated, mentored, and then progressively going through their professional responsibilities so that they can be successful. And let's give it to them in a way that they can invest their money and create wealth and not have debt around their necks. It's a long journey, right? You can't create, we used to joke in the Air Force that if you want a 20-year master sergeant, it's going to take you 20 years to make one. You can't just go get one, right? You just can't go recruit one. I want to go buy a 20-year. Nope, you're going to have to invest 20 years to get that level of experience, or you won't have the same thing. How about that? So if you want one, you got to have to play the long game and invest in them, and we can get them because they're out there. They're out there, and we can move beyond handouts and those kind of things, and use what really matters, which is the talent and the intellect in our community, which is probably the most powerful thing that we have. So that's what lies ahead, at least in my view.
Okay. I look forward to seeing it grow as awareness, if there's more awareness to it.
Yes.
It's going to be a nice thing.
So I do have another question.
Sure.
Support. How can people support companies, anyone? How can support? Tell us about that. So
studentfreedominitiative.org. I would say let's everyone go out to that site, educate yourself. If you're in a position and you want to give money, you're welcome to do so. There's a button on there that you can do, but more so than just giving money, that's not really the bigger issue for me. It is to help spread the word to students who are going to school, right? Tell them to give a historically Black college an opportunity. And I think to check the data on them. They do well. They do well. And I think they produce well. And that's all of them, not just the one that I went to, but you pick your state. Now, most of them are in the South. That's true. Most of them are in the South, but you pick your state. If North Carolina is your place, we got somewhere for you. If Texas is your place, we got somewhere for you. If Mississippi your place, I got 3-4 places for you. So it depends on where you're at, but give them a chance. And then when you get there, think deeply about what you're going to major in and how you're going to contribute. And then you may be interested in checking out studentfreedominitiative.org, which would give you a chance in your junior and senior year to finish school with the least amount of indebtedness that you can, assuming you don't have the money to just write the checks.
So you said right now it's heavily focused on STEM, but do you see that branching out?
It might, yeah, right. So we have to. It's a business model. And we need to be at an area where we're sure our donated capital can support. And so that's why we're initially starting there. As the capital goes up, we may expand. And there's good reason to expand, right? There's good reason to expand. I'll give you the reverse logic. teachers. There's a deficit in teachers of color in the country, even STEM teachers, mathematics, those kind of things. Should we be curating that talent? Yes, we should. We should have a plan, a long-term plan to get to that. Not there yet, but we know that that's a requirement. And it goes to our overall strategy, right? And so I think, yes, I can't tell you the exact date now when we go beyond that. We also use the term minority serving institutions and not just HBCUs, because there are universities out there. Chicago State, is Chicago State an HBCU? I've heard some arguments that it is and it isn't, but one thing is for sure, minorities are going to school there, and they're the dominant number of people that are going there. Georgia Gwinnett College, right? Georgia Gwinnett College used to be a 2-year school. It's a 4-year school now. They have a lot of STEM majors, mostly minority students. So yes, down the road, as we begin to have more capital from which to source, expanding the scope is probably a very real possibility.
Yes, sir. So that was a lot of great information. Before we wrap up, one piece of either advice to our students, our parents. Yes. Okay. Quick six. I'm sorry. We like to play a game called the Quick Six. We're going to shoot out 6 questions to you and we just want you to tell us the first answer that comes to your mind.
You bet.
Okay. Tie or no tie?
Tie or like tie?
Necktie or no tie? Yes.
That's a great question, man. Especially for my generation, right? I mean, my generation. But here's the real answer. No tie.
Oh,
all right.
Okay.
And not for me. Now for me, if I had done this interview an hour and a half ago, you would have saw me in a tie.
I think you said
what I mean by my answer is no tie is okay.
Yeah.
No tie is okay. It's not the most important thing, and my generation needs to learn that. But no tie is fine.
Okay.
All right. Talking food, grilled or fried?
Oh man. So, no one's gonna like this, but I've got to say grilled. Let's reduce the fried and let's go with grilled. I'm just trying to make it for the long run here.
Okay, I'm with you on that. Okay.
Basketball or football?
Oh, really? That's a great one. Basketball. I've been loving basketball. There's not a kid that grew up in the city that don't like basketball. Basketball.
Who's your favorite team?
My favorite team will always be the best team to ever play the game of basketball in the history of basketball. That would be the Chicago Bulls.
Oh, I knew you were going to say it.
It's got to be the Bulls. Okay. I'll tell you, the only jersey I own is a Bulls jersey.
There you go. Now, I love football too, but if you have to choose between the two, I'm going with basketball.
Reading, hard copy or ebook?
For me, hard copy. And I love to read, by the way. I would tell you, man, if you can discover the joy of reading, you can go beyond where your money alone will take you, right? You can go around the world reading. For me, hard copy, but I would back that up with get it whatever works for you. If it works for you to put the buds in your ear, go for it, man. As long as you're getting the information, I think that's great.
And learning,
yes, sir.
All right, dog or cat?
Dog. I got 2 Doberman pinchers. And that was part of my wife's retirement gift. So my wife likes dogs more than I do. But we have 2 Doberman pinchers. Their names is George and Martha. They're named after the very first president and first lady, George and Martha. George Washington and his wife, Martha.
Very smart dogs, too.
No, they aren't.
No.
Everyone I'm seeing.
I wish they were. But I hadn't had any luck with making them smart. But
all right, last one. If you're riding in your car, music or podcast?
Oh, music.
Okay.
Now, maybe podcast would be much more educational, and I probably should say that, but that's not what I'm doing.
But you're following up with the book.
Best of Luther Vandross, right? I'm in there listening to things that are probably way played out for most, but I listen to music.
Well, the best music is the older music to me.
Yes.
So.
That's right. That's right.
All right, so now you can do your.
Okay. Best piece of advice for whether it's parents, students, about financial aid.
Start early. You know, if I'm in the, if I've got kids and they're in the 8th or 9th grade, or if I got kids that are younger than that, you know, it's hard to sit down and talk about and think about money. I mean, there's lots more enjoyable things to do in the course of a day for most people, especially if you don't have a lot of it, right? And now, of course, it's probably easy to do if you got a lot of it and you just talk about everything you'll do with it. But if you're making ends meet and you're trying to get things right and putting a little behind, right? Putting a little behind, it's hard to sit down and think, what about this thing that's coming at me 5 years from now, 10 years from now? Is there anything I can do to prepare for it now? And there's always something you can do. Like, for instance, educate yourself on the process. The best money for going to college is free money, right? That's the best kind of money for going to college. So what does my state offer? How do I apply for the federal money, right? And what talents might my child have that I can help produce so that others will pay for him or her to go, right? You know, when we play some sports, we go to the traditional ones like we just talked about, right? There are some non-traditional ones that if your child is very good at it, the competition is less. Right. Going to an HBCU on a scholarship for cricket, right, might be the ticket, and you might not be competing with a whole lot of other folks, or even tennis or some other sports, right, or soccer, or whatever the sport might be. But my point is to look for where your child might excel, and look for all those other things, and make that a part of your strategy. And I think. Start talking to, if you want your child to go to college right out of high school. Now, I happen to believe that you have to find what works best for your child, right? And sometimes that's college, and it might not be sometimes, but it just depends. But if it is, start working a plan, because it's not getting any cheaper to go to college. And there's no reason to act like it's going to. I know that there's talk of free college. If you listen to the news enough, there's talk of we're going to do this, we're going to do that. Well, let me tell you, don't put your college plans for your child on the politics of Washington and think that the politics of Washington will come to save you. It'd be great if it happens. If it's free, take it. That's what I started with. But have a plan and start early with that plan and work toward that and make the child contribute in the discussion as they get a certain age, so that they feel the responsibility and the accountability that goes with going to college. So start early and plan. And then, you know, obviously whatever talents they have, you want to make the most of those.
Sir.
That was great.
Thank you so much. That was a lot more than I thought that we were going to receive today.
Not that we didn't think we were going to receive
yeah,
a lot,
no, not at all. But oh my gosh, I can already think about, we have a 15-year-old, we have a 17-year-old who are all like inching their way towards, you know, going to college, and just some things that we know we need to take a step or two back just to ensure that we're doing all we can, doing all the research and planning with them, sitting them down. They know our expectations as far as grades and in that part, but we got a little bit more homework to do to ensure that we support them and get them all the way there.
Well, they got great parents, and I know they'll be good, because that's the foundational piece, right? It's what has happened at home. And some people think money makes the difference. I happen to think it's all those other values that you're talking about, and all of it comes together because of that. So I'm sure your kids are going to be just fine. They've got great parents and a great start, and I wish them nothing but the best. And the same to you all both, right? I wish you nothing but the best. I think you know, your contribution to the nation together as a family, all that you've accomplished is impressive to me. And to be able to keep it together. I'll tell you one thing that's unique that most people don't realize. Two people wearing uniform, raising a family in the Air Force has got to be one of the hardest things to do. And I know most people may not know that, but I do, because I've seen it up close. I've seen the movie up close, as they say, front row seat. And it's not an easy thing to do, but to keep it all together and get it done, that takes a lot. That takes a lot. And so you should know that I recognize that, and that I know that that takes an incredible sacrifice.
Yes, sir.
Thank
Well,
you, sir.
thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for your service and
Yes.
in the military and now, like our future, our kids' future. So thank you for that commitment and dedication, everything that you're giving to our kids and their future, and not just our kids, to the entire United
All
States,
kids, yeah.
our community. So thank you so much for everything.
Thank you, guys. It's great seeing you. Stay in
too.
touch, and good luck with everything and your new adventure as well. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Take
All right,
care. Have a
you
great
too.
day.